Welcome back, Bright Lights, to Healers with Humor, Season 2, Episode 1. How do we work with our pendulums? I do have a disclaimer for this episode before we start. The information shared in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended as medical, mental health, or professional advice. While we share insights and personal experiences, we encourage you to seek guidance from qualified professionals when making decisions about your health, well-being, or personal circumstances. We are not responsible for any actions or outcomes resulting from the use of the information shared in this episode. Always trust your intuition and take what resonates with you. Now that we have the legal jargon out of the way. Hi, Shelly.
Hi, Candice.
Here we are, live and in person.
Yes, season 2.
Season
Woohoo!
2. Whoop, whoop. We made it.
All right. So, all right, we're going to make sure that we are more intentional this season about sharing some of the things that we are using and love.
Yes.
And you have the candle of the episode today, as always.
Yes. One of my favorite things. So today's candle is called Sacred Space, which doesn't surprise me as we talk about using, right, a pendulum. And the mantra for the sacred space from our beautiful friend Lindsay at Soul Love is I am divine in the sacred awareness that surrounds me. And so what that tells me is that we are always our own true north, right? So we are our own divine energy, and all of the answers that we need are within us. And for me, the pendulum, and I'm sure for Shelly as well, allows me to understand that just a little bit better or in a different way. But the card pull for today, because we love some oracle cards, is from the deck from Kyle Gray, just an archangel deck. And the archangel that came up today is Zedekiel. And so you can see this is a beautiful purple. Purple in my world is a lot about healing. And you can see a big full moon behind him. But to me, it's also representative of my pendulum, which is a big
Mm.
circle. And it's already moving. And so you can see he has on the card, he has his hands centered around a flame right at the center of his chest. So to me, this is all about understanding that this is a heart-centered practice. So as we move through the episode and as we talk about things, everything is really coming from that sacred space of our heart energy.
Mm. Yeah, well, thank you for
Yeah,
bringing the card of the episode and candle of the episode. I did bring something that's been my favorite thing. I don't know if you did today, but I
I
did.
did. Yes.
So I've been working with the Moonology Manifestation from Yasmin Boland cards,
Yes.
and I am loving these. So I've been doing a ritual in the evenings. So I have a practice that I've been doing in the morning, and I've been doing this in the evenings, and really calling on that feminine energy
Mm,
to work on me at night while I sleep. So I'm loving these, and they're beautiful
good.
cards too.
Yeah. Yeah. I love all of her decks. They're really pretty.
Mm.
Um, I also have, it always reminds me of a song from Christmas. Some of my favorite things? Some of my favorite things. And I am not uh, a tarot reader by any stretch of the imagination. I love all of the divinity systems that are provided for us, but tarot has not been a typical one for me. But I have really been guided to this, the wild unknown tarot. And part of it is I love this guidebook because I just have a really hard time remembering all the things that the tarot means. There's a it's not I wouldn't say it's a complicated system, but it's involved, and I just never remember. And so this guidebook has its own interpretation of what those are, and it just helps me really discern what it is the card means for me. And so I've been using that in the morning as part of my part of my goals for myself this year, which is journaling, which I'm not very good at usually.
I'm so proud of you.
And so I also got this beautiful book. The greatest self-help book is the one written by you. And so I just really like the way it's set up, where you have just a couple of prompts. You talk about some of your feelings, gives you some good questions, and then I write in the card that I pulled for the day, and what it means for me that particular day, what it is that I need to know. That's been fun.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
All right, so I think we're both excited to talk about pendulums. I think anybody that knows us knows that it's one of the tools that we both use on a regular basis, one of our favorite.
Yes.
I probably have too many, but I think that anybody that sees us with one knows that we're working on something.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
So I'm excited about today's episode.
Yeah, me too. It's one of the things that as we were going through season one, someone reached out to me and said, I've been waiting for when you're going to tell us how to use a pendulum or what you do. Like, we've been waiting for it. So we listen. If you have questions, we will listen, and we will provide you what you're asking for if we can.
Yeah, so I love that, that a listener who's been, listening to the season one had something that they wanted us to really dive into, right? It's
Yeah.
something that we both use. I guarantee you, for every probably episode that we did in season one, we both probably had one on the
Oh,
desk
for sure.
or two.
Yes. Always two.
So that was a good call out, right? To something that we didn't think to include in season one.
Yes. Absolutely. All
So
right,
good.
so
All
I
right,
guess we'll just
dive
kind of
in.
jump into some questions around um what is pendulum? What what are we using this for? For
Yeah,
me,
oh, go ahead.
so what is it that a pendulum is? Shelly, tell us what your interpretation is.
So I think of it as a tool that you can use. It's a great way to tap into your own energy. Um, I commonly have one that is a crystal with a point, but there's several ways to tap into your own energy, and it's just one of the ways that you can do that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I see it as a divinity tool. Same thing, right? That allows me to understand myself a little bit better. And yes, it can be a crystal, it can be, mine's acrylic, it's just a ball. You can also, if you're out and about, a lot of times I'll just use a bracelet, right? And ask it
Oh.
questions. So it depends. You can really use anything. It's all about intention.
Yeah, no. And I guess my question I was gonna, while you were talking, I was thinking, did both of us get introduced to it at the same time being introduced to emotion code, or did you use it before you got introduced to emotion code?
No, I did not use it before I got introduced to emotion code.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
think this is a good, we'll talk about it in resources too, but certainly in reading the emotion code and in the emotion code training that we both have certifications of, they
Yes.
cover in there several different tools that you could use. Sway testing, muscle testing, and a pendulum is one of the ways that you can get into the subconscious. So,
Yeah. And for me, because I'm an empath and because of the way that I take on other people's energy in my own body, it was easier on my body to use a pendulum than to use my own body, right? Different muscle testing techniques. Um, the pendulum is easier on my body than those other
uh
muscle testing techniques to get into, right? My client's subconscious to get information.
Yeah, especially when you're practicing. I can remember you reminded me, right, when you start
Yeah.
with the two circles intertwined, not using your hands and you're pulling apart. But yeah, you're correct,
Yeah.
right? You get tired fast.
Yeah.
Particularly if you're working on other people like we both do as well.
Yes.
Okay, so how does it work? How do you view the pendulum works?
Um, I view it as energy, right? It's a tool that allows me to understand the energy of my subconscious, of my body, and it's muscle testing. So it's giving me answers to questions that I'm asking. So it's a yes, a no, or maybe, or I'm not sure. But yeah, it just essentially works through energy. So connecting into my higher self, my subconscious, and asking for answers. How about you?
Yeah, totally agree, right? Using intention to tap into my own energy, very similar to muscle testing, but really wanting to focus on getting to my highest self.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the reasons for me personally that it was important for me to work with a pendulum is I had been so separated from my intuition and from my own kind of gut instincts for so long. I needed a way to do kind of a double check to trust, right? When I did get those intuitive hits, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit, but it was a way for me to be able to trust the answers that I was receiving.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah, I think if we think about what you can use a pendulum for, I think you just started that conversation, right?
yeah,
Not only have we said tapping into our own intuition, practicing intuition, right, and
yes,
understanding our energy. I know I'm going to talk about it later too when I talk about resources, but there's tons of healing charts that you can go through when you're trying
hmm
to figure out what's going on with your own body.
hmm
And that's a great way to think of questions that you don't normally ask and go through quite a bit of information, right, in a short amount of time using muscle testing, or in this case, pendulum.
yes,
I also do it for picking cards, making sure I can feel the energy, but sometimes I just want that double check with my pendulum. Is this the card for me?
yeah.
I definitely love taking a crystal and picking a new crystal to bring home because I always need another one.
Yes.
But also clearing energy, right? Sometimes we can get a little impatient and maybe not, as we're thinking about clearing and transmuting all the energy, right? We're just double checking that the pendulum is telling us with a double check that we're on, I'll say schedule, or we're accurate in that we've moved what needed to be moved.
Yes.
What else do you use the pendulum for? Because I know we've giggled about it
We
with
have.
me out in public and the things that we do.
Shelly's at the CVS testing her shampoo. I use it for food. So we use a food delivery service because I know how to cook. I just don't enjoy it, unlike my friend Shelly. And so we have these beautifully prepared meals that come, and I sometimes we make decisions all day long. Sometimes I just don't want to make a decision. Like, what do I want for lunch? I don't know. And so I use for this one, it's interesting. I actually use a crystal pendulum as opposed to the acrylic one. So I literally put my hand on the refrigerator and put my hand on the different meals to say which one does my body want today. And that's
Oh.
what I eat for lunch. So you can do it for fun stuff too, right? It doesn't have to be, this big emotional thing. Um, let's talk about for a second what we don't use our pendulum for. Um,
Huge life decisions.
Huge life decisions. We're not winning the lottery with our pendulum, right? We are not picking winning
Yeah.
lottery numbers. We are not picking the best scratch off.
Yeah,
Anything like that.
thanks for bringing that up because I do think, right, that it is a tool, right, that you can lean too much on.
Mhm.
And certainly it's a great tool to start learning intuition to help you make, decisions about, right? Because we've both used it to eat intuitively.
Yes.
And you picked on me, we giggled about picking out shampoo, right? But as a consumer, I'm going to pick something with my eyes, what's pretty to me, and that might have nothing to do with whether or not it is something that would work well. I'll just say with my hair needs, right?
Right.
But but I do think, should I buy this house really needs to come from more of a either a gut feel, intuition,
Yeah.
or if you're a person who's done human design, right, where your
Mm.
yeses, how your yeses come in,
Yes.
um, or but not to make health decisions, etc. Right?
Correct.
Using using just a pendulum.
Yes. Agree. Agree. Um, it's a tool, right? Just like anything else.
Mhm.
And we also get to use multiple tools, right, when we make our decisions. But yeah, you can have a lot of fun with the pendulum, and you can take it too far. So we just want to we put that disclaimer at the front end, because we we want to make sure people are being safe, right? And for me, it's a sacred process, right? I don't just go out and, I do carry a pendulum with me when I go out, but it's not just laying around in my purse, right? It has its own container, its own little,
Mhm.
its own little purse that it goes in, right? It is, I know for you, there's a protection and a clearing process that you go through because it is an actual crystal that you're using. But it's a sacred process. It's not just something that I'm using, for any which thing. So I think that's important for people to understand. It was for me at the end of the day, it was really about learning how to trust my intuition,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
it
no.
helps me connect into my client's subconscious. That's the other big thing for me, right? It's how I run my business. It's how I understand what energy needs to be cleared through that muscle testing through the pendulum.
Yeah, and I think it's important, certainly we talked a lot about it in the clear protect episode,
Yeah.
right? But just like any other tool, right? Our ego, our inner child, entities, tricksters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Can the importance of clearing and protecting and your setting your intention with
Hmm.
this tool is just like all of the other things that we talked about during that episode.
Yeah, absolutely. That was episode
Yeah,
14 of season one.
yeah, thanks. All right, so if we talk about how learning to work with our pendulum, do you have some? We've kind of talked about clearing and protecting the pendulum and our own energy. We've talked about intention to higher self. Is there
Hmm.
anything else that we want to make sure to include in the portion of learning to work with your pendulum?
Practice.
Mm,
Yeah. Right. This wasn't something that I just, did day one and was perfect at by any stretch. It takes time to understand, how to use the pendulum, how it's going to work, what your yeses and nos are, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, it takes practice, I would say. It's not something that I, mastered overnight by any stretch. I mean, I've definitely been working with the pendulum for probably 6 years now, at least that. How about
yeah, and
you?
yeah, no, I've been working with it probably at least 5 years. But certainly I think that you get better with it, or I'll just say know all the ins and outs and tricks and rules and
Yeah.
guidelines, right? It takes a while. That's why certainly we're going to share some books and some resources
Yes.
um, that you can dive in deeper if this tool you feel drawn to. Um, but yeah, no, I think that's a good understanding.
Hmm.
In the clearing and protecting, right? You mentioned a couple things that I do. I think, and we've talked about it in, episode 14, right? Intention's the biggest thing,
Yes.
right? Um, and whatever you feel drawn to for, cleansing and clearing and protecting, whether that's a prayer, whether that's an intention, whether that's, sage, etc., right? Whatever that is, it's just the fact of doing it.
Yep. Absolutely.
For me, I also just like with any other practice that I do a prayer of protection, right? So
Yes.
that you're not you are engaging in a sacred space, right? Which is why I
Mhm.
thought that candle was
Yes.
perfect. I was
Perfect.
like, and to your point about how you store them, right? So it's
Yes.
about having a sacred space. It's about treating it like a tool.
Yeah.
It's about using it with intention. and right, I don't want to say building a relationship because it's not a person, but it's getting
No.
to know your energy and to know, right, when if I'm having an off day and I get an answer that feels wonky,
Yeah.
sometimes I can realize, right, my ego has taken over the show, right?
Yes.
Just like, sometimes when our inner child comes out, right? And we've talked about that as well.
Yeah.
Same thing with this tool. My inner child has taken over. I wasn't in the right mood,
Yeah.
right in the right sacred space. Um,
Yes.
and all of that applies here as well.
Yes. Yeah. And I also think it's interesting to point out that we started, right, testing our own energies. And
Mm,
now, as practitioners, through being, certified, both of us with emotion code and other practices that we've done, we are able to connect into other people's energy, right? Um, but with their permission, right? That's the
mm,
key. You can't just sit at your house and, grab your pendulum and ask, what's so and so doing, what's going on. Like, you can't do that without their permission. So I think that's a big piece to understand as well. This is meant for you to understand your own energy, unless you're a practitioner working with other people and this is the tool that you're
mhm.
working with and have the permission of your clients to do that.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. And for me, my friends know that I've gotten pinged about something if they see me pull it out, right? And I'm like, "Can
Yeah,
I work on you?" Right? Asking that permission. I hear something
yeah,
that you said pinged me, and it's letting me know there's something to do for you if you're open to it.
that's right.
So that is a key point. That I'm glad you brought that up. So
Yeah,
if I think about how you picked your first pendulum, do you remember your first pendulum?
I do because I still have it.
Ah,
And so the woman that I was working with that was doing emotion code with me was doing muscle testing first, like on her body. And then because she was doing it so much, she actually got tendonitis. And so she had to find another way to do the muscle testing. And that's when she started working with a pendulum. And that's how, so whatever the one that she was using, um, I bought the same one. And it's if you're seeing this online, it is just a plastic acrylic um, circle pendulum. So it's not a crystal. It's called a neutral pendulum. So um,
mm,
Shelly could talk a little bit more about what using a crystal pendulum does, but this is a neutral pendulum. So my intention is always that it's clear and ready for me to use. So I don't have any sacred rituals that I go right and use to clear or protect or anything. Again, it's just my intention that it's always ready. But crystals have their own jobs, right? So when we use a crystal pendulum, Shelly has beautiful crystal pendulums that she uses. And so, like around my house, you're going to see like five of these little balls on strings, right? They're in every room so that when I have a question or if I have something that, I don't have to remember
mhm.
which room I left it in. But what about you? How about you? Do you remember your first one and do you still have it?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I feel sure that I broke my first one.
Okay.
As somebody who probably was using it walking through the house and slipped. Um, but I do tend to choose crystal pendulums.
Okay.
I am somebody who has probably 20.
Oh,
Now, I'd like to preface that by saying I also, as a practitioner, tend to give them to people.
yes, you
So
do.
when people haven't been familiar with it, or I hear that they could probably work with one, right? It's a share. But maybe I just meet a lot of pendulums that want to come home with me. Right. I do think one of the most fascinating things that I learned during the first time I was actually trained on a pendulum in a class, and they said, right, is when you go into a store, or if they're hanging somewhere that you could say like, does anybody want to work with me? And it's one of my favorite things to actually see. They just get so excited, right? They just shimmy.
You start moving. Yep.
And I have a pendulum holder in which they can hang in. And when I'm in my Reiki meditation space and I hear to work with a different pendulum, that's how they let me know which one.
Yeah.
So it's there's probably 10 hanging different kinds of crystals, and to your point, with different intentions.
Mhm.
Some are kind of daily ones, some are special ones, some are,
Yeah.
I'll call it heavy duty ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
But certainly, like today, in getting ready for the episode, I said, okay, so I have to pick a pendulum, right? And I don't want to pick favorites, but who wants to work with me tomorrow, right? And so the cool part is that the strawberry quartz one
Oh, nice.
is who wanted to work with me during this episode, right? And I don't know if it's because that tends to be more heart centered, like the
Yes.
card you pulled today.
Yes.
And so that's quite interesting as you were reading that card and realizing which pendulum I'm working with today.
Yeah.
Um, but I do think it's as simple as setting, intention, clearing and protecting in whatever fashion, whether it's by intention or practice,
Yep.
right? And then learning your yes and no, which we're going to get into in a little bit.
Yeah. So,
Um,
I mean, do you need more than one, Shelly?
I would say, much like yourself, I have them in different places throughout the house.
Yeah.
So for me, do you really need more than one? No. Do I need more than one? Absolutely.
Same.
Um, you know, to your point, I already have ones that I use on myself that I don't use on clients,
Yeah.
and they're more for me personally. I have ones that are called our travel, right? So one that's always in a special holder that
Yep.
goes in my purse.
Yep.
And so I do think, and then I can never remember the name of it, but you always do that have the
Yes.
heavy duty one.
Yes.
Um, that's really good for clearing energy.
Yeah. It's a biogeometric pendulum.
Yeah, see? There- so I do think depending on what you do, I think if you work on other people, you likely do need more than one.
Yes.
If you're working on really moving out some big energy,
Yeah.
I also think that you may need more than one.
Agree.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we already covered that I broke a pendulum before.
And I
And
have not. I have not
which
broken a pen.
so obviously the ones that want to work with me are taking a risk.
Yeah.
Uh, so what I do with them whenever they break is I really say, okay, what can I do? And typically it's can you put me to rest in a plant that you have? And so I definitely have pendulums or crystals in a plant throughout my home
Yeah.
when I've been a little too careless and broken the broken the tip off
The
one.
tip. Yeah. Well, and that's just a good
Yeah.
practice for any crystal, right? So as we work with crystals, sometimes they break. Sometimes they break for a reason. And that could be a whole nother episode. But yeah, planting them or bringing them back into Mother Earth, that's where they came from, right? They're part of the energy of Earth. And so putting them back where they came from makes a lot of sense.
Oh, yeah, but I'm definitely trying to be more careful.
Yes. Well, things
Um,
happen.
but yeah, so just, for our listeners, right? You can order them from Amazon or store online. You can pick them up at a shop.
Yep.
But the same rules all apply, right?
Yes.
So good.
Absolutely.
So we've already figured out in our getting together for this episode that we had some of the same resources, and I love that.
Yes.
We both found the Book of Pendulum Healing.
Yes. Well, you introduced me to it.
Yeah,
Yes.
Joan Rose Staffen. This
Yes.
is a great resource if you want to learn more about the pendulum. She has all kinds of charts, Great ways to deal into your own personal healing for
Yeah.
sure. We both talked about the emotion code. There is a
Yes.
book, there is a website, there is a course in which you can get certified, but all of them require, I think, you to read the book or essentially the book material.
Yes.
But they cover muscle testing, pendulum testing, sway testing, and probably 10 other ways
Yeah.
to tap into your own energy right as you start doing
Yes.
healing work. Because I do think it's important for anybody on a healing journey, right? You're going to need to do some of it on your own.
Right. Right.
And the third book I have is Louise Hay's Heal Your Body, which has a lot
Yeah.
of, I'll say faster ways to get to the root
Yeah. So a lot of good
of the
charts.
issues,
Yeah.
but great with a pendulum, right? So that you can narrow down either what page or chapter that you're looking for. I will
Yeah.
tell you now that I'm realizing that one of my greatest cheats in life
I was just gonna say, yes.
is what do I need to read in this book and determining either the chapter or the page that I need in that timing.
Yeah.
That has saved me so much time, particularly on a book that I was struggling to read with, but
Yep.
I know that I'm supposed to get something out of it. It's a great way for me to narrow that down and really hone in on what I need that day and whether or not it's important for me.
Yes.
So I'm a book cheat.
Yeah.
I wish I had had this during high school.
I don't think they would have let us break out our pendulums during high school, although you never know now. I'll say that this is also something that, that I learned from you is one of the questions that I'll ask if I'm making a decision, if I'm indecisive about something, is how does my body feel about that? So I can also test my body. And I was actually working with a client just recently where she was looking to not necessarily make a decision, but there was you know, it is it more beneficial for me to do this or is it more beneficial for me to do this and how she was handling the situation. And so we just asked her body what felt more comfortable, right? What felt better for her. Um, and I don't know if that's the one that she went with or not, but that was kind of the route that we went down, right? What feels better for your body, and that's been again kind of a big piece of my own healing when I'm making decisions. Do I want to do this? Do I not want to do this? If I'm indecisive about it, well, how does my body feel? So I think that's another great question you can ask.
I think it's great, especially, and I just want to reiterate, even though we touched on it, when you're trying to get back in touch with your body and how it feels to be in your body,
Yeah.
that is challenging for a lot of us. And so when you're doing a pendulum properly, right, it can be helpful trying to understand how to feel into your body. But I also think of it, one of the biggest things that I've used it for is eating more intuitively, right? What
Mhm.
does my body need versus what would I pick? Because
Yeah.
I might not always pick what my body needs in the moment or what
Yeah.
is, I don't want to say healthiest because I think about it more of like what it is that my body is needing or doesn't like,
Right.
right? What do I need to avoid? And I found that really helpful to make some of those decisions, right? Because my
Yeah.
eyes, when they look at the menu, really want this.
Right.
But what my body is really asking for is this
Yes. Yeah.
and getting more
When
in touch with that.
Yeah, when I ask myself if I want some cake, the answer is yes. When I ask my body if that's what it needs, unfortunately, most of the time that's a no.
Right. Right.
And then I get to make my own decision,
Yeah.
right? Do I do it? Maybe. Do I not? Maybe. Who knows?
Yeah.
Depends on my
But you do
mood.
it with that knowledge, right?
That's
You
right.
do it with that knowledge.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing I want to make sure that I touch on before we kind of demonstrate, I'll say the yes and the no, because one of the things that I learned in classes, and I just thought mine was broke, was everybody was like, this is your yes, this is your no. And that's not true.
Yeah.
I do think right after you pick your pendulum and
Yes.
you and your pendulum are going to work together, understanding what your personal yeses and your personal no are really key. And it's
Yes.
going to be different, and we'll demonstrate that for you.
Yep.
But your pendulum can be as simple or as complicated as you are.
That's right.
So I'm pretty basic, and my answers are like yes, no, I don't know, and maybe a maybe.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for my pendulum to really dive deeper in that, then I'll go into intuition and a meditation with my guides. But I have friends who I have just watched blow my mind with the amount of different responses
Yeah.
that they have on the pendulum. So if you're a person who likes really detailed responses, then you can build, you can come to that with your pendulum and have as many different responses that you can remember, right?
Yeah.
As that you can recall. Maybe that's why I don't have that many. Um, but if you're a person who likes to dig down into that, right, you can absolutely do that. But we'll actually work through like yes, no, and clearing energy today with the listeners.
Yes. Yeah. The other thing I would say is around that when I first held a pendulum, it didn't do anything, right? It just
Oh.
sat there. I was like, is this thing on? Right? Like, what's happening? And so you talk about building a relationship with your pendulum, but it is something that you need to build a relationship with. Now anytime I hold anything in my right hand that moves, it moves regardless of whether it's a pendulum or a piece of string or whatever, a bracelet, whatever it is. It
Uh-huh.
actually moves in my hand regardless. But when I first started, it didn't do anything. So it took time and practice for me to train it, right? About what, learn my body and just those types of things. So if you are a new person to pendulums, don't get frustrated if it doesn't move at the first time you touch it.
Uh-huh. Hmm. All right. So I think the first thing, right, is to, once you've picked your pendulum, to ask it to work for your highest and best.
Yes.
To clear the energy and protect. And we're not going to go through that exercise. We've covered that in episode 14, but the same thoughts here apply. Whether you just say, guides, angels, protect me, clear and prepare my pendulum to answer to my highest best, it can be as simple as that.
Yep.
Okay, you ready
I am.
to demo? So
Yes.
here's what I love. So as I start to talk with people, uh, have you ever done demo mode with yours?
I have not. You've talked about it.
So I do. I ask my pendulum, "Hey, are you willing to do demo mode?" And it just in the same spot. That's my yes, right? So that um my pendulum will be in demo mode for this portion of the episode.
My pendulum doesn't know what that is, but it's just going to answer questions.
Okay, so I think the first thing that we ought to do is show a yes, and so that you can see how different our yeses are.
Yeah. So right now mine is just moving back and forth,
Yes.
and that
Well,
just means it's waiting for me to ask it something.
okay, so ask it something that you would say yes to in order to demonstrate your yes.
Yeah. Is my name Candice?
Okay, so Candace's yes is her pendulum circling,
Yes, to the right, to my right.
while mine stays straight in its position with just a little bit of what I call almost like a dog wagging its tail. It just is like excited. That
Yeah.
is my yes. So my yes is that I know what I want, that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
Hmm.
Um, and very different from Candace's yes.
Yeah.
All right, so ask a question that you would say no to so that we can demonstrate no. Of course, mine's already going since it's in demo mode. So
um,
my no is a to and from my
okay.
body.
Gotcha. Is my name Shelly? So my pendulum spins to the left, saying, no, my name is not Shelly.
Yeah, and mine goes back and forth just like a head wagging. No.
Not funny?
So you can see how different those are.
Yep. So funny.
Okay. And then I think the other one to show is energy clearing. So when
Yes.
my pendulum is clearing energy, mine makes a circle to the left,
Yeah. Mine's the
and
same.
yours also does. So
Yes.
three responses, two that are completely different,
Hmm.
and one that is the same. So it is important to understand how your body's energy flows through the pendulum and what that looks like.
Yep. Yep. And for those of you that are watching online, you know, when we ask these questions, it's a very subtle movement that's happening in our arm, right? We are not in control of the way that our arm moves as the energy is flowing through it. So when I ask, does my body want pizza? That's a no, right? And so then I could follow that up with a bunch of other questions, right? Is it
Mhm.
because it's gluten? Is it because it's this? Is it because it's that? Do I need more protein? Right? Like you can ask a bunch of other questions, but it's a very uh, minute movement of our arm that is telling the pendulum which way to go, right? It's a shift in energy. So I just wanted to show that because when I work with my clients, they really like to see pendulum moving. They're always trying to they're looking at it like, is she moving her arm? Is she not? I'm not. The energy's just moving through it.
Yeah, and so if I think about how you use it with clients, a lot of what you're moving through are emotion code, body code, and belief code charts.
Yes.
Is that primarily how you're using it?
Yes. And I also use it when I do the Akashic records,
Hmm.
so that when I'm discerning, right?
Hmm.
Am I hearing the master teachers and loved ones, or is this my intuition or my voice? So I
Hmm.
use it to differentiate who I'm hearing the guidance from.
Okay. And
Yeah.
then if I think about how I'm using it with my clients, so after I've gone kind of down the body, working on the things that I've heard to work on, it's like a double check on the chakras to make
Hmm.
sure that they're in a place, and a double check on energy that needs to be moved out.
Gotcha.
So really using it just to make sure that I've done my work and
Hmm.
all the work that I can do on the body that day.
Yep. Nice.
So, well, good. All
Excellent.
right. Um, so certainly if you'd like to see, how we use it in session, um, then you can certainly book a session with either one of us. You can find me at findingyourlighthealing.com.
Or you can find me at indiglowsoul.com. And of course,
Certainly.
on any social or on Instagram and Facebook. I'm on Pinterest. Very exciting. And of course, you're potentially watching this on YouTube. And so you can always subscribe to our YouTube channel.
And we'll also be posting the resources of the books and training for pendulums that we've talked about in today's episodes.
Yeah, we'll put those in the show notes for you. All right. Well, this was awesome, Shelly. I can't wait for our bright lights to start understanding pendulums and start using them. Send us your questions, send us your thoughts. We always love to hear from you.